The Amalekites had been a long-time enemy of Israel. When the children of Israel first came out of Egypt, led by Moses, the Amalekites attacked them to drive them back. Saul had been sent on a particular mission to wipe out the Amalekites. He'd gone into battle and had a success in the battle and killed many of them, but he hadn't wiped them out. David, while living in Philistine territory, had fought against the Amalekites, while telling Achish that he was fighting against the southern part of Judah. Achish had been impressed with David, had believed all the stories that David said, and intended to bring David along as part of his contribution to the big Philistine army that was going to attack Saul. And David had indicated that he was willing to go with Achish. But the lords of the Philistines were not impressed that Achish would bring one of whom they sang, "Saul has killed his thousands, David his 10,000s." What if David turned against them in the midst of the battle? That would be a disaster. So David was sent home. Now it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept, until they had no power to weep. And David's two wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every one with his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Then David said to Albeit the priest, Abimelech's son, "Please bring the ephod here to me." And Albeit brought the ephod to David. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them?" And he answered him, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all." So David went, he and the 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook Bezor, where those stayed who were left behind. But David pursued, he and the 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Bezor. Then they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate, and they let him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" And he said, "I'm a young man from Egypt, servant of an Amalekite. And my master left me behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites, in the territory which belongs to Judah, and of the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Can you take me down to this troop?" So he said, "Swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop." When they had brought him down, there they were, spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives, and nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock, and said, "This is David's spoil." Now David came to the 200 men who had been so weary that they could not follow David, whom they also had made to stay at the brook Bezor. So they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless men of those who were with David answered and said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except for every man's wife and children, that they may lead them away and depart." But David said, "My brethren, you shall not do so with what the Lord has given us, who has preserved us and delivered into our hand the troop that came against us. For who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to the battle, so shall his part be who stays by the supplies. They shall share alike." So it was that from that day forward he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. So when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord." To those who were in Bethel, those who were in Ramoth of the south, those who were in Jatir, those who were in Ariel, those who were in Siphoth, those who were in Eshtmona, those who were in Rakal, those who were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, those who were in the cities of the Kenites, those who were in Hormah, those who were in Korashan, those who were in Aphek, those who were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were accustomed to rove. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together this chapter 30 of 1 Samuel, where we see David is reconciled with the Lord. The startling thing is that when David has lost all, his family, his city, and his men are on the verge of killing him, where can he turn? He strengthens himself in the Lord. He goes and gets his guitar, we might say, his harp, and sings some of the songs that he had previously composed, turning his heart back to the Lord. And when he had reminded himself of the ways and thinking of the Lord, then he seeks guidance from the Lord, calling Abiathar to bring up the ephod and to ask the Lord, "What shall we do?" And the Lord directs him to pursue the Amalekites and provides that David can defeat the Amalekites. Note, he attacked them in the evening. They'd had a day of revelling, of dancing, of feasting. They were settling down for the night when David and his men, though outnumbered, fall upon them and rout them. But 200 of David's men were not able to participate in that battle because they had not been able to cross the river Bezor. They had to stay on the other side. Their strength was gone. But David makes sure that they have a share in the spoils that come to them. And when he comes back, he doesn't keep all this stuff for himself. It is the Lord who has given them the victory. He repays the people in all the area where he had been roving. He had been living off the land, but there had been people there who had supported him. He was in their debt, and now that he suddenly has all this wealth, he uses it to bless them, to give them presents. And so in this one chapter we find David, through faith, turning an absolute disaster into a wonderful victory. Although we can say David made a mistake when he went down into Philistine territory, and it looked like he was going to have to fight against the people of God. God overruled in the circumstances, even to the destruction of Ziklag and the taking away of all their possessions, just so that the Lord could restore fellowship with David and prepare David for his next role. Ziklag was destroyed because it was no longer needed by David's people. He would move on to take up the throne. But Ziklag was rebuilt and would remain as an Israelite city in Philistine territory. for years to come.